everyone, welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. We have done a couple of cute and cozy little ornaments for the tree so far this year, and we have one more to add to the set. So in addition to our little hat and our little mittens, we're going to make a super cute little sweater. This adorable little thing is based on the very popular hexagon concept sweater. So it's a little mini version of a hexagon. And we're also going to show you how to make this little hanger that it goes on too. In fact, Mr. InStitches is going to show you how to do that towards the end of the tutorial. You don't need very much yarn. This is definitely a scrap project, and you can make it in solid colors, tweeds, variegated, self-striping yarn, whatever kind of fiber you might have lying around. It's an ornament, so you don't have to really worry about it shrinking or anything, because you're probably not going to be tossing it in the wash. So let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, grab some pipe cleaners. We'll head on over to the craft table and we will stitch up a couple of little miniature sweater ornaments together. In order to make our little tiny sweater ornaments, you need around 30 to 35 grams of yarn, about 85-90 yards to be safe, of a size 4 or size 5 weight yarn. You can use acrylic wool, whatever you might have in your stash. Since this is an ornament, you don't have to worry too much about fiber. You want a couple of pipe cleaners, so we're going to use 2 to make a single hanger. You're going to want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and the hook I'm using is a 4.5 millimeter, also known as a 7 in the US and in the UK. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please take a moment to click that button and the bell so you never miss another episode. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. We're going to start by making 2 identical solid hexagons, and we want them to be a little wiggly and kind of tight in the center, because when you do that, they automatically fold flat over top of itself, and that's how we're going to get one full half of the sweater. So we want 2 identical hexagons. We're going to start with a cinch circle. So this is how we're going to make a nice tight center. So make yourself a nice big loop. Chain 1 to secure it, and then chain 2 more. So you've got a chain 3 now coming out of your cinch circle. The chain 3 at the beginning of every single row counts as a double crochet. We're going to double crochet twice more now into the circle. Make sure when you're working into your cinch circle that you're always working over top of the short tail, because that's what's going to allow us to cinch the circle up nice and tight when we're done. So that's 3 double crochets. Remember, we're counting our chain 3 as a double crochet. We're going to chain 2. This is going to create a corner. So chain 2 equals 1 corner space. We're going to work 3 more double crochets now into our cinch circle. So there's 3 more double crochet. We're going to create another corner space. So we're going to chain 2. And we're going to continue this. So 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, chain 2, until you have 6 sets of 3 double crochet and 6 chain 2 spaces all the way around. So what you want at the end of row 1 or round 1 is 6 sets of 3 double crochets. So there's 1 set, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And 6 chain 2 spaces. So when you finish your last 3 double crochet, make sure you chain 2. And if you have trouble cramming it into your circle, remember you can always just sort of pull back on those stitches. It's going to wiggle, that's okay, that's what you want. You're going to take your short tail and cinch up that center circle nice and tight as you can make it. And it's going to be all wiggly, and that's exactly what we want. It's very important that it's nice and tight. So you're going to find the top of your chain 3 now, and just join with a slip stitch, and that completes row or round 1. So we should all have a tight, wiggly looking little hexagon. We're going to chain 3 to begin row 2. Remember, every chain 3 at the beginning of a row counts as a double crochet. And now we want to double crochet into the top of each of the next 2 stitches. So because that chain 3 counts, it's sitting right on top of that chain 3. It counts as a stitch. We're going to work into the next 2 stitches. So double crochet into each of these next 2 stitches. And that brings us up to our first chain 2 corner. Every time you get to a chain 2 corner, you're going to do the following. 2 double crochet right into the space. Chain 2, and 2 more double crochet all into that space. It's going to be a little on the tight side, but that's what we want. You want to work a double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So this is very important. Anytime you leave a corner, so once you've worked 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, pull back on those last 2 stitches so that you can reveal the top of that first stitch. See it there? That's it right there. You don't want to miss it because it will throw off your count. So you always want to make sure you pull back on those stitches to reveal that first stitch. Double crochet into it. Double crochet into the top of the next 2 stitches as well. That brings you up to the next chain 2 corner space. And into the chain 2 corner space, you work 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. And you're going to continue this all the way around. You're going to work a double crochet into the top of each of those double crochet stitches from the row before. Anytime you get to a corner space, you're going to work 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet into it. And remember, anytime you're leaving the space, so leaving your corner, pull back on that last stitch to reveal the top of the next one so that you don't miss it. And I'll catch up with you at the end of row 2. At the end of row 2, you'll have 42 stitches, or 7 double crochet running across each side. So 6 sides times 7 double crochet is 42 stitches, and you'll still have 6 chain 2 spaces. The last thing you're going to do in row 2 is finish off that corner. So 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, and that brings you right up to that chain 3 that began the row. So we're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. And that's your last row completed. So you should still have 7 double crochet running across the top of that last row. Just remember to count your chain 3. It does count as a double crochet. So that's row 2, nice and wiggly. We're going into row 3 now. It's our final row of double crochet. We're going to chain 3 to begin. Remember, this counts as a double crochet. And you want to work a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches between your chain 3 and your chain 2 corner. So this counts. This is the next stitch we're working into. So this one right here. It might look a little funny. Make sure you get your hook into it. And you're going to work a double crochet into the top of those next 4 stitches between the beginning of your 3rd row, and the chain 2 corner space. Chain 2 corner spaces are always treated the same way. So you get to one, you work 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 double crochet all into that same chain 2 space. Makes a nice corner. Remember, when you're leaving, to pull back on those stitches. You don't want to miss the top of that first stitch right there. And now you have 7 stitches to work into all the way across. So you're going to work into the top of each of those 7 stitches, 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet into the corner space. Work a double crochet into each of those 7 stitches and continue all the way around. You're going to have 66 double crochet stitches at the end of row 3. And when we get to the end of row 3, I'll hook up with you just so we all finish it properly together. As we near the end of row 3, round 3, you're going to work your last corner, so 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, and that leaves you with 2 more double crochet to work. So I don't want you to be confused by this little stitch right here. So this little thing at the base of the chain 3 is what we call the false stitch. Sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't. It always appears when you're kind of working in the round and joining a row and then chaining to continue on with the new row. So we're going to ignore it because it's sitting underneath the chain 3 and we don't want to use it. So you just want to work a double crochet into the last 2 stitches. Each side of your hexagon at the end of row 3 will have 11 stitches in it, 11 double crochet. You can join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. You'll still have 6 chain 2 corner spaces, and it should be nice and wiggly. It should look something like this. And that's it. You want to make 2 identical hexagons that are nice and tight. First row, each side has 3 double crochet. Second row, each side has 7 double crochet. Third row, each side has 11 double crochet. So each row increases by 4 stitches, or I should say each side increases by 4 stitches per row. Each row increases by a total of 24 stitches. So every row you increase by 24 stitches. So at the end of row 3 you'll have 66 stitches. You'll still have your 6 chain 2 corner spaces. You can just snip your yarn, fasten off, and we've always been working in the same direction. So this is the right side of your hexagon. This is the wrong side of your hexagon. You might still have your little tail sort of sticking out the back from the beginning. Take a moment to weave both of those tails in on the wrong side of your hexagon. And when you've got that finished, go ahead and make a second one. Once you have 2 of these wiggly little hexagons and you've woven in all your tails, now you want to fold it so that it looks like one full half of a sweater. So here's the front and the sleeve. That would be the back and the sleeve. That's one half of a sweater. You want to take 2 corners that are opposite each other. So 2 corners, doesn't matter which ones, but you want 2 corners that are opposite each other. And you're going to take them and fold them together. And that is how it folds neatly into one half of a little sweater. And it lies flat, and you can use sort of like whatever side you want as the front or the back. I think I like that for the front. And you can place them together and you can already start to see your little sweater coming together. So what we want to do now is sew together the back seam of our sweater. So if you lay your 2 pieces down, right sides facing out, and then peel out the front, this here is the seam we want to sew. So you're going to cut yourself a length of yarn, around 18 to 20 inches or around 25 centimeters. And you're going to pick up your 2 pieces so that you fold the right sides. So if this is the back seam, you're going to fold it so that the inside or the wrong side is facing out. The right sides are together. And we're going to just sew up this one seam. Take your yarn and attach it. So I like to put it through, this is the second chain of each of those corner spaces, and then just knot it a couple times. And now all you're going to do is just whip stitch through both sets of stitches. So needle goes through both sets, and you're always going in the same direction. So the whip stitch is a nice overcast stitch. You're always going to go over top of your seam. I'm just going to weave my little tail in as I go. So over top through each set of stitches. Don't pull too tightly. You don't want them to be too loose either. And you can just work your way up the width of that seam. Once you finish sewing all the way up that seam, work your last stitch through the first chain of each of those corner spaces, and then go through it a second time just to make sure that you've got, so go through it and then go through it again. So you're going to work through that set of chains twice, and then we're going to knot off. So I'm just going to loop my needle underneath that loop. And I'm going to do it twice. There we go. And then you can take a moment to just weave a little bit of that tail in through some of the stitches on the inside of the sweater. Doesn't matter what side. I mean, you want it to be on the inside of the sweater, but it doesn't matter on what side of the sweater. Left or right, doesn't matter. Weave it in back and forth a couple times, and if you have any leftover yarn, feel free to trim the excess. So that's the seam done for the back. And again, if you just sort of close it up, there's your little sweater. Now all we want to do is sew the top seam across the top of our sleeve, so sleeve number 1. Take a quick break for the neck hole and then continue sewing up sleeve number 2. So you want to cut a length of yarn that's about double the length of the last one you cut. And you can do one of two things here. You can turn this inside out, or you can just sew across the top. Now, if you're like me and you've got a multicolored sort of sweater going, you might want to work your stitches on the inside like we did the last one, because that looks nice and neat and tidy. But I'm just going to demonstrate by working over top on the outside of the sweater, because that's what I've done with these other two. And you really can't tell that the stitching is on the outside. So you can work it on the inside or the outside. It's up to you. But you don't have to flip it inside out if you don't want to. We're going to join our yarn in the same place that we did as the first seam we did. So you're going to pick a set of chains at the edge of that sleeve and knot your yarn. And then you're going to work across the top of that sleeve by sewing through each set of stitches until you get to the stitch that's one away from the corner chain space. So here's the stitch. You want to stop sewing in this stitch here, so the second stitch away from the corner space. So just take your time. You can work that nice and tidy little whip stitch, that overcasting stitch, through each set of stitches all the way along the top of your sleeve. I'll catch up with you near the neck. Once you've sewn all the way across the top of that sleeve and you've stopped sewing, so in the second last stitch, and make sure it's the second last stitch on both sides, you may come to the, once you wrap around and go through the second last stitch on the other side, you're only going to come to the inside of the sweater. You're going to pass your needle underneath some of the stitches on the inside of your sweater. You're not going to pull very tightly. And you're just going to zip across the inside of your sweater. And if you're using a yarn that is all one color, this won't show at all. But like I said, it's going to be on the inside of the sweater, so it doesn't really matter. There we go. So we've run our yarn through the inside of our sweater, and it does not show to the outside. And now we're going to continue sewing up the other sleeve. So this is just so we only have to sew one seam. We don't have to keep breaking our yarn and starting over. We're going to go out through, so here's the first stitch away from the corner. Here's the second stitch away from the corner. We're going to go out through the top of that stitch. And it's going to go through the top of the second stitch away. So there's the first one, here's the second one, away from the corner. And you're just going to continue to whip stitch all the way across the top of the other sleeve. And then when you get to the end, you can work through that last set of chains twice, knot your yarn, and weave your tail on the inside of your sleeve. And I'll help you out with that when we get there. So we've got a nice little seam now running across the top of our little sweater. And when you get to the end, you can flip the inside, make sure you've knotted your yarn, flip the inside of your cuff out a little bit and just weave that tail in across the inside of some of those stitches. Now, if you were doing all of this sewing on the inside of your jacket, so if you had your right sides together, for example, then you would just complete your sweater and finish the weaving in on the same side before you flipped it right side out. But I am not too concerned about my showing off that neat and tidy little stitching. I kind of like the way it looks, and it does make it a little bit easier. So once you've woven your tail in back and forth a couple of times, you You can trim any excess that you might have. Stretch out your little cuff. There we go. And that's the sweater all sewn together. Now we just want to work a simple little edging all the way around the outside open edge of our sweater, and that will finish it off nice and neat and tidy. We're going to take our yarn and start with a slip knot. Then you're going to pick up your sweater, flip it upside down. We're going to start in the center back. So right where we were seaming our little sweater pieces together, you're going to slip your hook underneath that stitch. That's why I always say you should sort of go over the end places twice. It creates a nice solid stitch for you to use a little later on. We're going to join our yarn with a slip knot, or a slip stitch, I should say. We start with a slip knot, we join with a slip stitch, chain one, and now we're just going to single crochet all the way around. So we're going to single crochet back into the same place that we joined our yarn in, so right in that seam. And the next thing you come to is a chain two space. Now part of that chain is already used because it was part of the seam, so that just leaves one chain. But we're not going to fight with the chain, we're just going to work a single crochet into the space and then immediately into the next stitch. So you're going to work a single crochet in the top of each of those stitches all the way along, and I'm just working over top of my short tail because it saves me having to weave it in later. And you're just going to single crochet all the way up to the next chain two space. So we started in the back seam, worked away across the bottom front of our first panel. That brings us up to the first corner. That's a chain two space. We're going to work 2 single crochets into that chain two space. That's it, just 2 single crochets. Just turn in the corner. And now you're going to work a single crochet in each of those stitches all the way up to the next chain two space. So that brings us all the way up the front of the first panel. Now we're at the top chain two space and we want to work around the neck area. So in the chain two space, we're going to work 2 single crochet. That'll just turn the corner for us. Remember that first stitch there that we skipped? We're going to single crochet into the top of it. We're going to single crochet into the edge of the seam. And this doesn't have to be perfect, guys. You just want to try and get some even stitching around the neck. Single crochet into any of those stitches around the edge of the neck. So maybe the one that you sewed through, the one right next to the chain two space. Just work a single crochet into that space there. We're not going to treat it like a corner. A single crochet into the top of the seam at the back of his sweater. Another single crochet into that space. We're not turning any corners, that's why we're not putting 2 single crochet into it. And then single crochet into the top of the next stitch, into the top of the stitch that you sewed through. That kind of creates a nice backing for our little sweater, so you can sort of see that there. We're going to sew through the seam of the other side of our sleeve into the next stitch that we skipped. And that brings us up to the top actual corner of the other panel. So into that you're going to work 2 single crochet because now we're turning the corner, we're kind of curling down to do the front of the other panel. You're going to single crochet into each of those stitches, work 2 single crochet into the bottom corner, and then a single crochet into each of those stitches. It'll bring you back up to the end and I'll catch up with you there. As you get back to where we started, you're going to work a single crochet into that last stitch, 1 single crochet into that last space. We're not turning any corners, so it only gets 1. And now you can join with a slip stitch to the top of that first single crochet we made in the center back seam of our sweater. That's it. Snip your yarn, fasten off, make that a nice tight knot. Grab your yarn needle and you can weave that tail in on the inside of your sweater underneath some of those stitches that we just made. And there we go. One little miniature sweater complete with a nice little bit of edging. Now all we need is a miniature hanger to go with it.
Hi everyone, Mr. InStitches here. So I am going to show you how to make the little hanger for the little miniature sweaters. What I have here is 2 pipe cleaners. Now you don't have to use 2, you can just use 1, but I find that if you use 2 and twist them together, it just helps make it a little bit stronger. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I've got the 2 of them twisted together just so that it makes it a little bit stronger. And what we're trying to do is make the little coat hanger. So let me just get this little thing out. So very basic shape there we're trying to do. So how are we going to do that? Well, first what we need to do is grab about, I'd say that's about 2 inches, and fold it up into a little bit of a triangle. So you have something like that. I'm going to get this out of the way here. Then we're going to take another roughly 2 inches and twist that like this. So now you want roughly that shape. And I'm going to pick my spot here. I'm kind of doing roughly 2 inches, 2 inches, and 2 inches, just rough estimates here. I'm going to take this little piece and twist it so that we lock that in place. Just be a little bit careful on this part. You don't want to poke yourself. If you have tools for doing beading or jewelry, needle nose pliers, go ahead and use those. I'm going to try and press these out of the way so they don't poke through the sweater or Jayda's fingers. So now we've got this little shape, looks a bit like a key. And I am going to, I guess you want to decide how long you want the neck to be. You can make it as long as you want, depending on how you want to hang it. I'm going to twist it about here so that we've got that sort of shape. And then I'm going to grab the end here and twist that in. You could also just cut that off, or you can just twist it in like so. Make sure the little piece is kind of tucked in there so that you're not poking. And then just gonna shape it a little bit. And there we go. That looks the same. That's the one I made earlier. There's the new one. Let's see if it fits. Put that in here. All right, little sweater. There we go. One little coat hanger.
A trio of little miniature sweaters. I absolutely love these things. They're so cute. I have had so much fun at making these little sets of cozy outdoor clothing ornaments. We hope you've enjoyed making them along with us too. And as an added bonus, if you're concerned about your little sweater falling off its hanger, feel free to sew some buttons onto it. You can fold one panel flap over top of the other one, and with a needle and thread, add 2 or 3 buttons evenly spaced down the front of your sweater. Another reason to jump into that button stash and add a little extra bling to your sweater. We will see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye everybody.
Hey everyone, Mr. InStitches here. You're listening to smooth Christmas jazz in the craft room. Here are some more Christmas tutorials you may enjoy. Thank you for watching today, and don't forget to subscribe. Stay safe out there.